Welcome to the October NetBox community call. My name is Jeremy Stretch. I'm the founder, the lead maintainer of the NetBox open source project. Filling in today for Jordan, I will do my best Jordan impression to the best of my ability. This month, we will be covering a few things. As always, we'll start with community news. Then we're joined by Artem, Kotik, and Steve Corp to present some content. And then toward the end of the call, we will go ahead and open it up for discussion. All right, so we'll dive right into it. I've got a few bits of interesting community news for this month. Net DevOps Days is kicking off in New York City. We've got a few release updates for the open source project. And then finally, I'm very excited to announce several open roles that we have at NetBox Labs, all pertaining to the NetBox project. All right, so first up, Net DevOps Days. Some of you will probably remember we had our first Net DevOps Day conference in London back in, I want to say, June. And it was a huge success. We had over 100 people attend. And it was very, very engaging. I unfortunately was not able to attend myself in person, but I will definitely be there this time around. So now we're doing the US side of that conference. It's being held in New York City in, I believe, Eastern Midtown Manhattan. It's a one-day thing. It runs 9 to 5. Tickets are still available. General admission is $199. And recent development as of, I think, yesterday, it just became official. New York NOG will actually be taking place in the same venue. So I believe they had to relocate. They were scheduled for the same day, lost their venue or had to move venues for some reason, and were able to tack on to our event. So we are actually running a promotion now. If you register for NYNOG, I think there's a discounted ticket for Net DevOps Days as well. So you can actually do your whole day networking. So we've got, again, Net DevOps Days runs 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. locally. And then I believe NYNOG picks up at 6 p.m. And I think it runs till 9. Someone can check me on that. But very, very excited about that. There's a quick URL there on the slide, and I will drop I'll drop a link to the sign up page if you're interested in the chat and in Slack. All right. Next up, some quick updates about NetBox. So initially, we were planning on releasing NetBox 4.0 in December, but given just the breadth of work that we are planning for that release, we decided to push it back, not rush it. That it's going to entail most likely a UI refresh. We'll likely be swapping out the GraphQL API engine, which is currently Graphene Django. Probably swapping that out with a different library called Strawberry, and some other major overhauls as you'd expect for a 4.0 release. We just didn't want to rush it. We want to make sure we're doing it right. So we're going to push that back to April. And instead, in December, we'll be doing a normal 3.7 release, a normal minor release, which is not meant to underwhelm anyone from the release. We've got a lot of interesting stuff that we're working on. You can check out the milestones right now on GitHub. And as always, vote for your favorites. Give it, if you see milestones or features that you are interested in getting completed, either in 3.7 or just generally, be sure to give them a thumbs up reaction on the issue in GitHub. Something else to note of 3.7, some of you might be aware that in 3.6, we actually implemented support for translations for internationalization. So we're going to start shipping these. We've got, I'm going to try to take on Spanish, not because my Spanish is great, but it's something that I'm at least somewhat familiar with. And I'm going to work, I'll be working on the process of actually going through and adding these the language maps and everything to the open source project, and kind of inventing the process as we go. Another individual in our community, Renato, is also volunteered to do Portuguese, and I think we might have a couple others. We want to keep it intentionally limited for now until we really bake in that process, so that we don't have too many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak. But I'm really excited to see that finally get out and shipping. So we should have hopefully both of those languages shipping in 3.7. And our last piece of community news, NetBox Labs currently has 3 job openings, which is pretty outstanding. We're hiring a software engineer, a solutions engineer, and a product and program manager. We've got some brief descriptions there on the screen. I'll let you all read. But this is incredibly exciting for me because the SE role, admittedly, is going to be a little bit more toward the commercial and sales side, as you might expect. However, the software engineer is definitely going to be working hand in hand with myself and with others at NetBox Labs on both the NetBox open source project as well as NetBox Cloud features. The product and program manager role as well is very exciting because this is going to be one of the primary responsibilities of this role will be a long-term planning and road mapping for the open source product, which is it's been a pain point for me for a long time because we just have not had the resourcing to dedicate to that kind of thing. It's going to be someone that helps with everything from the low-level triaging of issues day to day to long-term planning and figuring out milestone releases and all that good stuff and helping with all that. So, I mean, make no mistake, it'll still be very, very much dependent on community input. Like I mentioned, people vote for their most requested features on GitHub. But this is a resource that will bring intentional action and planning to that. So that I'm very excited to see the benefits that we can reap from that on the open source side. So if you're interested in any of these three positions, or if you know someone who might be, by all means, head on over to netboxlabs.com/careers. All the listings are posted there. The PPM role is, I believe it has to be US based. The other two roles are open to the US and Canada, UK, and EU, and all of which support remote working. NetBox Labs is a fully remote company. With that said, let's go ahead and kick it off with our two presenters who are gracious enough to join us today, Artem Kotik and Steve Corp. Artem, I will go ahead and hand it off to you if you're ready to go.
I will start sharing my screen.
Okay.
So, can you see it?
Looks good.
Okay. So, hi, my name is Artem. I am a network automation engineer at GT Cloud, and today I want to share with you my plugin NetBox config diff. Plugin has two main features. First, collecting diff between rendered configuration in NetBox for a device and its actual configuration. Second, pushing rendered configuration from NetBox to device and apply it. First, I want to talk about collecting diffs. It uses native NetBox configuration to apply rendering. You can compare the whole config from the device or only some parts. You can use a data source as a source of device actual configurations. And with the help of Scraply and Scraply community, it works with a wide list of vendors. And now I will show you how it works. This is my NetBox instance. I have only one Arista device with active status, assigned platform, primary IP, and config template. I have a very simple template for a device with basic system settings and interface management. Configuration for Ethernet interfaces are missing. So settings for collecting diffs are stored in platform settings module. You can find them under plugins menu, platform settings. Let's add one. Our platform is Arista. Scraply driver for Arista is Arista EOS. Show command for configuration is show running config. And with exclude regex, you can ignore some parts of actual configuration and compare only sections you really need. So let's create it. Now we can collect diffs. Plugin adds custom script into your NetBox with the name config diff script. You can define site on which devices will run the job or devices directly. Also, if you have a data source with configuration backups, you can use it, and script will find a configuration by device name. So let's choose our device and run the script. And it will be done shortly, just in seconds. So script find diff between configurations. Results you can find under plugins menu button in config compliances. So this is the diff for our device. On the left side, you can see a rendered configuration. On the right, there is actual configuration from a device. And the device has different host name. Device doesn't have banner for login, and my template is missing configuration for interfaces. Also, here you can check the rendered configuration and the actual. That's all for collecting diffs, and let's proceed to the second feature, configuration management. It also uses native NetBox configuration template rendering, and it can be used even if you have partially rendered config. Plugin uses Scraply CFG for configuration management, and script rollbacks configure devices if occurred any error. And it works only with 5 platforms: Arista, Cisco, and Juniper. And now I will show how it looks like. In the beginning, the substitutes. You can find them under plugins menu button. So you need the substitutes if you does not have fully rendered configuration for a device. Like in my example, I don't have configuration for Ethernet interfaces. With substitute, you can replace a tag in your template with a section from actual configuration that matches with the regex. So our platform is Arista. Name for the tag will be Ethernet_interfaces, and regex that matches all Ethernet interfaces on a device will be the next. Let's create one, and I will show how it looks like in device config template, this tag. You should define it like Jinja2 variable. So there is this tag. And now let's create a configuration request. You can find it under plugins menu. So add our device and create request. This is our request, and before running any configuration job, we can collect diffs and review it. So I think job is done, and the results we can check at the diffs tab. So here is our diff. Device has another host name and doesn't have banner, and there is no diff for Ethernet interfaces because substitute replace this tag with a section from actual configuration. And before running any configuration job, you should approve your request, and you can see who approved this request. And now we can schedule our job. Before scheduling, I will show you a device console and its device and its configuration. So the host name is Steelers, and there is no banner. So let's schedule our job. For today, my instance has UTC time zone, so it will be 3 p.m., 16 minutes, and seconds. So now you can see who should schedule the job and the time job will start. Also, you can unapprove or unschedule any request. So I think, yeah, the job is done. Let's refresh our page. And here we can see the job log, and we see that that our config successfully pushed to a device. Let's check our device. So we see the host name is changed, and there is our banner, and also our interface, Ethernet interfaces are in place. And if any error occurs while executing a job, script will roll back all configured devices. So test in labs before we use it in production. Back to my slides. So that's all for me. There are QR codes for my plugin GitHub page and my LinkedIn profile. Scan it, try plugin, leave feedback, open issue on GitHub. Thank you for your time and the ability to present my plugin. So if you have any questions, I open for a discussion.
Artem, thanks so much for sharing that. That's amazing. I love how you've got the whole thing. Not just pushing out config, but you have a workflow for approvals. You have scheduling enabled. Everything looks very well done.
Thank you.
All right. If there are no immediate questions for Artem, we'll move on to the next presenter, but we'll open the room for questions toward the end of the call as well, if that's okay. All right. Steve, would you like to go ahead and take over?
Hello everyone. Yeah, my name's Steve Corp. I work for a company called Evolve Technologies, which I started with two other partners almost 10 years ago now. We've been doing DevOps and network automation for about that sort of length of time. So I'd just like to show you something that we've written that will work with NetBox, and it will pull IP information in from AWS. Now, this could probably be extended to other cloud providers as well, because they use similar sort of concepts, but at the moment, it's just AWS. Actually going to show you two things here, because we've got a slightly different setup. So one is the script, and I'll show you that, and we'll run it, and we'll see how it works. And the other thing is how we run it, because we've got our own execution environment that we're just working with at the moment, but we'll see both those things. So let me just share a screen. Share the screen and on a Google desktop. Where's that? Actually, it might be easier if I just share this. Hopefully that will be okay. I can increase the font if it's not. So firstly, here's the code. This is public repo, by the way, so you can download it. Over here, I've got NetBox instance. This is completely empty. I've just added, the only thing I've added is a tenant group, but I could delete that in the script to add that anyway. So what the script is going to do is it's going to read IP information from AWS, and it's going to post it into NetBox. Now, one of the things that we had to consider when doing this was how do we map that in.
What you're going to do is you saw in NetBox we created a tenant group. Underneath the tenant group, we're going to create tenants, and we'll create one for every account. So you can have a multi-account AWS. Most companies do. So we'll create a tenant for every account, and that will be like a long number. That's the tenant. That's the AWS account number. Then what we'll do is within an account, you'll have a number of VPCs. Now, VPC is a complete set of IP address space, so you could have multiple VPCs, and they could all have 10 dot blah 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 in them. So we'll create in NetBox, we'll create a VRF per VPC, and then all the subnets in each VPC in AWS speak will be put in under the VRF in NetBox. So you'll get, for each VPC, you'll get your list of prefixes and subnets. So that's the intention. Install instruction is pretty simple. It's Python script. So create a virtual environment, best practice, install the requirements. I've done that here. Hopefully that's big enough for you to see. I can make it a bit bigger. Yeah, so then we just run it. So NetBox IPAM PY, so I can do. And it's got argparse type help in it. I think I've been underscored there. Yeah, there you go. So the script itself needs a config file. So I've got one set up here. For AWS, we need to use a role name that has got the permissions to access. We need to read EC2 information, and we need to read organizations info. There's a list of regions you can run it against. So in the account we're using, we've only got stuff in EU West 1, I think, anyway. But that's just a list, so you can add them there. This is our instance of NetBox is running there. Now here is, that just points, that's the full path to this directory, and there's a folder in there called secret. If you look at what's in there. So they're just files, and they've got, each one's got the AWS access key, secret key, and a NetBox API token. So now there's some sort of, so you're probably thinking, well, there's some issues with that, but we'll come on to that in a second. So if we just run it, give it the config file. Now, if you don't specify the -commit flag, it will just do a check, and it will compare what's in AWS with what's in your NetBox instance. So there you go. So I've actually, this is empty. I've cleared everything out. So everything that's in AWS needs to be added. Now, this is our own AWS account, so it's quite small. So there's not that much. There's only actually one account. So that's the account that will be added as a tenant. Then within that account, we've got these VPCs and then these prefixes. So if we just do it again, we commit.
Okay, so switch over to here, and you should see oh, actually, if we click in tenants, so we've got that tenant has been added, and we have, actually it's probably better to look at it the other way around. So from VRS, so these are the VRFs that have been added. Just copied in the descriptions as well to give you an idea. So you can see all of these VRFs are under this tenant because they're all in the same account. Then we have prefixes. So again, the prefixes are tied to the VRF. Tenant is the account name. also copied in the AWS availability zone. So, because that's sort of useful information to know, so you know where the subnet is for the R-type planning, that kind of thing. And then IP addresses. So that's what it looks like. Now, the next part of this is we thought, well, that's okay running it like that, but it would be it'd probably be better to have a nicer, more netboxy kind of way to do it. We considered an IP a plugin, which is more Jeremy will correct me if I'm wrong here, but it looks to me like a Django app basically. So it's more you know, you can add things to the database, all that kind of stuff. And we thought, well, do we want to add some of this information, you know, like AWS details and that, do we want to store it in NetBox? I don't know, you know, if it's NetBox Cloud, maybe not. So what we thought instead was we're in the process of developing a platform that runs on Kubernetes that allows you to execute scripts by hitting a URL. So what we did was we wrote a small script that will run in NetBox, but all this script does is hits the URL that runs the job. So what that means is, well, a couple of things really for this application is, one, this is quite, you know, it's obviously just a small account. If you had a big account, some of our customers have, you know, 40 or 50 accounts, and then within those, they have loads of VPCs, loads of addresses, etc., etc. So that could take a while to run. So doing it this way, all the processing is done on your Kubernetes cluster rather than NetBox. Also, you don't have to store any credentials in NetBox because all you need is a token to log into the Kubernetes system, hit the URL and go. So that's the idea. So if we look at that, actually, I'll run this one more time because take the commit off, because what it should show you now is that it's all the same. Basically, there's no updates needed. Okay. So if we look at the scripts, so yeah, it'll be here. So the script's quite simple. So this is, I won't go into too much detail about this unless you want me to later, because I don't want to sort of railroad the whole thing. But basically, this is the URL of our Kubernetes system, our scripts launching system. You need credentials for that, which you can just give it. I'll just use the super user ones for now. You can use all the scheduling stuff that's available in there. If you don't hit the commit, it will just run in test mode. So if I run, yeah, there you go. Okay, so what it shows you is success means it's just launched a job. So, and it's given you the job ID. So we're using a system here called Rancher, which is like a Kubernetes orchestrator to look at jobs. So if I click on jobs here, what was the job name? Ends in something G. Okay, so that's this one. View logs. No updates needed. So what we could do just to make it see it actually do something is I'll just delete all these. Oh, the script will delete as well, by the way. So if you've got things in there that shouldn't be there, it will show them, say, I'll delete this when you run it. So so you can keep it in sync. Okay, so if you go back to scripts, same thing again. I'll just run it in sort of dry run mode. It's that one ending in BK. This one, I think. it's still running. Okay, so this is basically saying it's going to add all these things because I've just deleted them, so it will add them back in. If I run it in commit mode. So that is it. That is the end of the demo. So the repository is available, and you can just run it from a Linux host, just as I've done there. The script that I used is there, included, but obviously you'd need the Kubernetes system to make that work. So if you're interested in talking about that, I suggest drop us an email and we can set something up to talk about how that works. And that's it. Thank you very much. Any questions?
That's very cool, Steve. Thank you for sharing that. I think I've got, tell you what, let me get through one more slide and then we'll go ahead and open it up for questions. Let me go back to sharing my screen. So thank you, Artem and Steve, both for presenting. Excellent content. I'm definitely going to be looking into both of those projects. Finally, a quick call for presenters. So if you were watching this call today or later on as it gets posted to YouTube, and you thought to yourself, hey, that looks cool, I think I have something like that might be of interest, reach out to us. We'd love to have you present. We're always looking for new presenters, and we do this every month. With the caveat that I think we might be skipping December just because of the holidays, but that has yet to be decided. We will definitely be doing one in November at least, and that will be November 21st, and that is at, I believe it's a Tuesday, and that's going to be 11 a.m. Eastern time, which at that point it's after the daylight savings change, so I'm not going to even attempt to tell you what that is UTC right now. But we will have that information posted very shortly. There is a link in the chat, or there will be a link in the chat very shortly, where you can go to sign up, or you can reach out in the NetBox channel on the NetDev Slack, or you can ping me through any of the various social media platforms where you might find me. All right, that is it for me at this point. Thank you everyone for attending, and especially to our presenters. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and then we will open it up for questions and discussion. Well, actually, I will record up until there are through any questions for our presenters, and then if there are any other questions for general discussion, I will go ahead and stop the recording. So any questions for Steve or Artem at this point? Okay, if not, I had a question for Steve. You mentioned that you had the script that exists kind of on its own, and you mentioned something about perhaps not wanting to do it in plugins. And it's interesting to me because we've had a conversation around like modeling cloud resources like AWS, Azure, Google, etc., about being able to model those resources natively within NetBox. And I think you've stopped a step short of doing that, right? So you're saying, I'm going to take all these things and model them to the best of my ability using core models within NetBox. So using VRF to represent VPC, for example, modeling prefixes and IPs and so forth. Have you thought about potentially building out, like converting that to a plugin that would install cloud provider specific models to model those resources? Or are you happy to just stick with the native models that NetBox provides?
Yeah, so this came about as a customer requirement, actually. So they've got NetBox, they've got on-prem equipment, and they've got AWS. So this meets their requirement as is. But yeah, to give it more utility, make it more generally useful, I think that would probably be the way to go with it. We haven't done it for a while, actually, but we've got a fair bit of experience of writing Django type apps, so it wouldn't be too onerous for us to do that. But we thought, just to get something working and out there, first of all, let's do it the simpler way to start with.
Yeah, that's a smart play for sure. You start small, get something working, and then iterate from there for sure, and not trying
Yeah.
to boil the ocean. Yeah, I get that definitely. And it's an interesting topic because, like I mentioned, it continually comes up in conversations around the community. Like, how do I model cloud resources? And I think the part where I get stuck is like, do we try to model, if we were to do that natively in NetBox, would we try to model a generic thing like this idea of a VPC across all cloud providers, or would we have to do, use specific models and specific vernacular for each? Because obviously cloud providers in a sense all at a low level provide kind of the same thing, right? Here's your virtual network, here's your your virtual machine, etc. But they all use different terminology, and of course there's little differences, especially when you get into the complexities of like direct connect and Amazon and AWS world and so forth. So it is an interesting consideration.
I think so. It depends how far you want to go with. So the immediate ask, really, the immediate problem that this customer and actually other customers have had is that, okay, I've got my on-premise team, I've got NetBox, I've got no idea what's happening in AWS as far as IP address space is concerned. There's like a default 172.31 or something that's probably in everyone, in like every account, in every VPC, all of that kind of stuff. Companies lay down guidelines, but then they don't really know how they're being adhered to or not usually. So that was the initial ask. But then again, yeah, I mean, the way that I've done it, they sort of fit just about, but really, if you're going to model it properly, you'd model a VPC object to have the attributes of VPCs. I've kind of like put things in description fields and stuff like that where useful, which is but yeah, if you were going to do it and spend a bit more time doing it, it would make sense to build the models per cloud provider.
I was going to suggest as well, you mentioned using the description fields to store the VPC name, for example. Custom fields could be a way to go too.
Yes,
using a fairly light touch if you wanted to do that, but very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Artem, I have like several questions for you as well, but I think I need to organize my thoughts and probably play around with it, play around with the with your plugin first before I waste your time. So I'm going to be following up with you. I think probably on Slack, if that's okay.
Yeah, okay, it's fine.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording at this point. If there are no other last call for questions for either of our presenters. Always have to give it like 10 seconds for someone to jump in. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording at this point. Thanks all for attending. And if there's anything just in general you'd like to discuss, feel free to hang out. Thank you.